one thing I've noticed going on here in Los Angeles, okay? A lot of people have lost their homes. They're not making their payments on their cars. And, you know, I found out here people are actually selling their junk gold and melting it down to pay bills. That's going on right now, right? It's going on right now. Okay, so as far as things go, I totally believe in having food storage. That's why I made a video on wheat. People should have some extra food storage. And so instead of having 10,000 in the bank and going to McDonald's every day, I would buy some extra food and have 2 or 3 months of food around. It's just basic common sense. So it depends where your assets are. A lot of people don't have 10,000 in the bank anymore. But even for $100, you can go buy some basic food commodities. And if you're a more well-heeled person, yeah, I would buy corn futures. I would buy wheat futures. So I'd get food. Food is something that is necessary. It's not it's in economics, it's called, you know, there's prices that are flexible and inflexible. The food prices, people have to have food. They're going to buy it no matter what the price. If a sandwich costs $50 and you're starving, you're going to figure out how to get to $50 to buy some food.
I think food is going to be the first to shoot up, and gold will follow. I don't think gold will shoot up first and then foods. I think food will shoot up first.
Gold's already shooting up.
Food shot up double what gold shot up.
Explain.
I don't care about these futures and commodities when it comes to foods. It's what I see people pay for. Like with how foods are selling at the grocery store. It's selling at double what it used to. So while the futures and the agriculture looks like that, but the companies are making double their profit because they're charging double. They won't part with their potato chips for 50 cents anymore. They're gonna have to charge you $1 for it. While the commodity index doesn't say it, they're charging you $1 for it. So they're making double what they used to make.
Why is that?
I mean, it's the same. They buy the same products at the same price, right? Let's say potatoes. They're buying a bushel at the same price. They've been charging 50 cents. But now they're charging $1 for it. Same thing with Hostess cakes, even those little things. That's where you see the real inflation go up. Things that people always gravitate towards. Cigarettes, comfort food, alcohol. You're going to see alcohol go up next year too, you know? It's purely, commodity based.
American consumers are noticing as prices are going up. And one of the things economists aren't talking about is that here, by their own admission, we are facing the mother of all contractions, the greatest contraction since the last depression. Ben Bernanke, everyone's admitted that. But the question nobody's asking is, then why aren't we seeing prices going down? If we're seeing debt contract, if we're seeing debt accumulation contract, consumer spending contract overall, but for some reason we're missing that key component to a real contraction, and that's a decrease in prices. That's what we're not seeing. So what that tells you is because of all the inflation, which is by definition an increase in the money supply, we are seeing prices either go up a little bit or not go down, and that's a problem.
But we've seen a decrease or a collapse in Southern California in real estate prices, so we've seen some collapsing in prices.
Well, just like in any downturn, just like the Weimar Republic, you'll see a contraction in some prices, and mainly non-need items. And of course the housing market is something unique because it already experienced crazy inflation, crazy price increases over the last 8 years, and now those things are starting to come down. But they should actually be even lower than where they are. But because of the artificially low interest rates set by the Federal Reserve, because of the bailouts, and because of all these kind of government entitlement programs where they give people $8,000 to buy a house, because 80% of mortgages right now are being supported by the Treasury Department or Fannie and Freddie or FHA. So right now you have prices not going down where they should go. You still have a situation where the average American can't afford a home. I mean, seriously, people say homes are low, at $100,000 in Southern California, but why are there so many properties on the market? Because people still can't afford them. The affordability is still rough for people. And if somebody makes $28,000 in a certain part of Southern California or $50,000 in Southern California, that means the average home should be roughly 3 times their income, their average income historically. But if you go to places where income is $28,000 a year in Southern California, the homes are still roughly $250,000. If you go to a place like in LA County where the average income is roughly $55,000, homes are still $300,000, $400,000. So we still haven't reached a historical affordability level because they are keeping those prices of homes propped up. They should actually be even lower than they are right now.
And most Americans, their main asset is their home. Okay, the people that are homeowners. And those continue to go down. They're still artificially being held up. So there is deflation in home prices. So we got deflation in home prices, but inflation in food prices. And I think we'll see tremendous inflation in food prices going forward the next few months.
Most of the products that's made in the stores, especially our foods, is not made in the U.S. Most of the stuff comes from Mexico. Mexico is one of our biggest food creditors. So we're borrowing a ton of money from Mexico just for food consumption. Mexico is our creditor nation now. Isn't that kind of funny? And so is China, Pakistan, India, and Brazil. We get a lot of our food stuff from there. 99-cent type of items, whether it's toothbrush, toothpaste, lint roller, lighters, every single thing is made in China. Nails are made in China. You're telling me we can't mine a piece of nail and make a piece of nail in Arkansas somewhere and make it cheaper than China? How does that make sense? It's cheaper for Chinese to make the nails, pay everyone, import it, and export it, pay all the tariffs, and then sell it to us. It's cheaper. All the ice creams that we sell, all Mexican products, made in Mexico. Most of the chips are made in Mexico. Most of the sodas are bottled in Mexico and shipped over here. When I buy a pack of 24 case of Coke from the Los Angeles bottling company of Coca-Cola, I buy it for $24 a case. You know, a case like two flat. If I buy the same thing from a Coca-Cola that was imported from Mexico in the downtown area, I could get it for 18 bucks. How does syrups flying from Atlanta to Mexico and bottling it there and exporting it to the US, how is that cheaper? Taxation. That's the inflation tax that killing everybody in the US. But as you can see, that's the reason why everything is coming from other countries. We can make it here, but with all our regulations, taxes, and everything, it's just not profitable enough. It's forcing the companies to move to other countries.
So when people think that the United States is a free market, it is not a free market. In fact, one of my viewers over in China, we started talking about stuff because, China really wasn't a free market 2 decades ago. He said, dude, you think you're a free market. We're a lot more free over here in China than you are. In a lot of ways, there's tons of government regulations, George. Just on a loaf of bread, there's like 300 different taxes between that wheat being harvested in the field until you get that loaf of bread at the store. All kinds of taxes. We're being taxed to death here in the United States of America. Just think if I bought a house here in Beverly Hills I could have bought a mansion here 30 years ago for, let's say, $100 grand. Probably a pretty nice one 30 years ago. Well, 100 grand, let's say my property taxes were 2.5%, so they'd be what, $2,500 a year. So let's say I'm living on retirement and I'm still making $3,000 a month and I'm an older person, I'm 80 years old. Well, what happens if they raise the property tax? They say, well, that house is actually worth, $1 million now. So your property taxes now are $25,000 a year. Does that wipe out that person on a fixed income? Absolutely. So all over America, I know in Utah, property taxes, some places are $700 on a piece of property. Boom, $4,000. People's property taxes have been raised all over Utah. I know that because I've seen them. And in other places, property taxes are being raised. So the power of taxation can destroy somebody that even thinks, hey, I'm set, I'm free and clear, I got my house. Now you got to deal with property taxes. So unfortunately, the American consumer, with all this tax and spend stuff, doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. It matters, the taxes keep going up and people are saying, hey, I'm paying 50% in taxes, 55%. Now what, I got to pay $7,500 to get covered in health care? What about if I want to be healthy and I don't need a ton of health care? I got to pay for the guy that's like totally wiping out his life and spending 100,000 medical bills. I got to pay that. That's messed up. And what, they want to put us in jail possibly if we don't pay the $7,500 bucks. $7,500 isn't pocket change for every American family struggling right now.
The Chinese investors who's holding the dollars, who's, you know, putting their money into the US, you know, buying up properties, it's already been happening, but they're losing out big time. Because any money that they were putting in, all the regulation fees, property taxes, liens, you know, they could, well, there was a group of investors that's bought, what, 1,000 houses in Detroit for like $5,000 a pop. But turns out, you know, they owe $30,000 in city fees. City fees. So how's anybody supposed to invest in America again when all our county, state, federal wants a piece of that cut at the inflated property prices? Not this, you know, prices that's dropping now. They want the highest appraised value from, you know, 2-3 years ago. Property tax will get you and your family and your grandkids.
One of the reasons the stimulus isn't creating jobs is because the stimulus plan won't let job creation happen. See, if we didn't have the stimulus right now, we would have prices contracting, consumers could actually start buying stuff. Let's say prices really contracted. Let's say we didn't have 0% interest rates for the banks and we didn't have an $8,000 giveaway and cash for clunkers. What would happen? You'd see prices drop, you'd see automobiles drop, you'd see overall prices drop, goods drop, and this would actually create a scenario where thriving businesses would do really well, healthy businesses would do really well, they'd be able to hire more people. Yes, you'd have the excess, the bad businesses, the businesses that shouldn't stay open, close. But overall, you'd see businesses actually be able to grow through the depression because people would be able to still buy their goods. People could afford stuff. People could buy more homes. Imagine how much inventory we would have if homes in Southern California were allowed to fall to their real value. Maybe they fell to $50,000 or $75,000. You would actually have a lot of buyers, a lot more buyers than just this stimulus plan that, you know, it's like the $8,000 tax credit for home buyers. They call it a tax credit for home buyers. It's really a tax credit for sellers because the buyers, it's in their interest for prices to drop, but that's not letting prices drop because it's creating an artificial demand. It's actually keeping the sellers happy because it's keeping their houses a little higher in value because there's an artificial demand for buyers. So the stimulus always creates an artificial demand, and when you have an artificial demand, the market can't work through this depression. It can't work itself out. But the fact is, in economics, there's no such thing as a jobless recovery, and you certainly can't borrow your way to prosperity. If that worked, then we wouldn't even be in the downturn we're in right now. Because if you look at the Dow Jones and then you look at the accumulation of credit card debt over the last 30 years, they mimic each other. If you look at the baby boomers' peak spending habits and the Dow Jones adjusted for inflation, they mimic each other.
As a store owner, I go to the 99-cent store and try to shop for, you know, new products, or I need to fill up my shelves. A lot of products that's missing. A lot of the staple items that used to be there all the time, they're missing. No one has a word. Hey, when's the dog food gonna come in? Well, you know what? It hasn't come in for like the last 2 months. I see empty shelves at the warehouses where the dog food used to be, because dog food was, I guess, apparently it came from China, and you know, they wouldn't release the boats from the ports. They just turned them back to China. So that line of dog food that they used to have real cheap at the 99-cent store, it's gone. No more. Now we only got that Pedigree brand.
So it's not being sold at a higher price. What's happening, you're seeing products just disappear.
Yeah.
Explain that dynamic again.
Well, on their way from China or India, there might be a, you know, 2-3% depreciation on the dollar. I mean, in this current time, for them, that's a huge loss for the time that's coming here. And then now their products are not really flying off the shelves. What's the point? When they got a consumer base as strong as the United States now, they got to feed 1 billion people. They got a consumer base of 1 billion. So now their standard of living is rising. It's going to get to a point where their money is almost equal to ours. And they're going to be like, hey, why should I, you know, spend all my time and effort and tariffs and send it to US when I could just sell it here now? It's just like the Olympics, the Chinese Olympics, right? All the newscasters went there. There wasn't any English-speaking guides. They'd never seen that before. Like, you got all these tourists coming. How come you don't have any guides that speaks English? And you know what the guide said? Why do we need any tourists? We got 1 billion people coming to our thing, and they all speak Chinese. So it was like, screw the English speakers. We got all the guides speaking different province dialects, because Chinese have a lot of dialects too. We're gonna service our Chinese audience. Forget the world. They don't need the world to consume their products anymore.
Well, we know historically that wages over the last 30 years have not kept in line with inflation. And, you know, the government can show us CPI, they can show us this fake inflation where, you know, if Americans buy steak one year and then steak goes up, they'll swap it for hamburger meat because of hedonics and the Boston Commission after 1996, when they started changing a lot of our numbers even more drastically than they did prior to that. You know, they can use that CPI. But if you look at real inflation, you look at these alternative private statistics, wages have not been keeping up with inflation over the last 30 years. And just to give you a good example, if a grocery store clerk or just somebody with an average job, you know, average pay 20, 30 years ago, he could support a family of 4, support a family of 5, he could still buy a home, he could still send his kids to college. And over the last 20 years, with this hyper debt we've seen, now it takes 2 incomes to buy a home. It takes 2 incomes to raise a family. Maybe you rent. Maybe you don't even own now. And it takes a loan to go to college. It takes a loan to buy a car. So we're not seeing real wages keep up with the artificial growth we've seen from inflation. All we're seeing is an increase in debt meet that demand from inflation.
If you want to talk about the dollar collapse, where are all the 2010 import cars? Where's all the advertisements? Where's all the new model Toyotas that's supposed to be coming out? Where is it all? There's not a single advertisement about it. The only thing 2010 you're seeing is by Ford or GM.
And why is that?
They're not going to ship it here. It's going to other countries now. China has already surpassed us in being the largest car buyers in the world last year. So where do you think Toyota, Honda are going to try to market their cars to? Here? Over there. Well, toilet paper, about 4 rolls of these, about 3 years ago, we used to be able to sell it at $1 for 4. Right now, with prices as it is, these are selling for $1 each. That's 3 years, triple the price in 3 years. When you see hyperinflation, people has to stop looking at gold and other things like that. When you want to see hyperinflation at its core, look at the price of paper, beans, rice, soy, staple foods, the main source foods. That's part of our staple diet. Bread, yeast, batteries. Batteries, those are one of the first things to go up on a hyperinflation level. Watch out for batteries. Most of the stuff are imported and they're all metallic components. Whether it's zinc, silver, palladium. When those things have to be made in other countries and imported over here, you're going to see the real hyperinflation. Because they're going to say, what? We sell those at 50 cents each, but the dollar going down, shipping cost going up, energy price going up. It's not worth it to sell it to the US for $2 each. Not even at $2. So when that happens, you're going to see all these. I mean, we are a 70% consumer base. Everything is imported. What happens when the imports stop? And there's no production capacity in America? Hyperinflation. The only way to get goods in from other countries, because we have no production, is we're going to have to pay double, triple what we used to, or they're not going to sell it to us. What's the point? They used to sell it to us on credit, but we're not paying back anymore. On an average person, while they might not know it, but for the people who does the shopping, like the women who shops for their family, I mean, if you offer them $1 or toilet paper, they'll take the toilet paper because this is going to have so much more uses. Do you get it, George? This has 1,000,001 uses, while this is limited to a soda. That's the magic of the depreciating dollar. I'm sure this, 100 years ago when the Federal Reserve conceived it, it could have bought probably 100 rolls of toilet paper, right? But now it could only buy one. So the dollar depreciated to 1% of what it was. We're only 1% away from the total collapse of the dollar. 1%. What is people holding on to right now? If it depreciated 99%, we're only left with 1%, right? Everybody's holding on to this thread of 1%. It could happen tomorrow, or a year from now, or 2 years from now. But we're on an agreement. It's going to happen. Might as well be in position. Get 100 of these.